His name is Richie. Okay. That's funny. Okay. So, okay.
Richie Rich, specifically. I bet.
It's horrible. Subtlety. Okay.
Hey guys, welcome back to Nitrate. Just wanted to remind you to like and subscribe to our channel if you're interested in the content that we're making. And also go ahead and comment. We only cover so many bases in our conversations, and we would really love to hear from you what opinions and thoughts you have about these movies. We know we're not covering everything, and we are interested to hear what we're missing and just get that conversation started in the comment section. So yeah, today we are talking about a movie called Swallow, and it's a little bit of a doozy. I think Mike and I feel the weight of this one, of talking about this one. So, yeah, stick around and we will
shit on it. Because not enough people are shitting on it. Okay. Get ready. You know, it's a 6.4. Of course it does. All right. So Swallow, 2019. It's a drama. It's a thriller. It's rated R. It's an hour and a half long. Here's the thing. Hunter, a newly pregnant housewife, finds herself increasingly compelled to consume dangerous objects. As her husband and his family tighten their control over her life, she must confront the dark secret behind her new obsession. And I'm going to hold up the poster. Should I do it?
Sure, or I can insert it in.
This is the poster. What's she about to eat? What is that? It's a thumbtack. And you'd be surprised, that's not even like that's like the second thing she swallows. That's like
it doesn't lead up to that. It's pretty early in the...
Yeah, that should have been the worst thing she swallowed.
Yeah.
Okay. So it got a 6.4 on IMDb, the only score that really matters. And it got a 65 Metascore. Nice job, Metascore. Don't listen to critics. Critics don't know what they're talking about. Okay.
All right, Micah. So without giving away any spoilers, what did you think of this movie?
I thought it had a lot of potential. I thought the trailer made it seem like a really cool movie, but they don't really give you a whole lot of back plot that makes you really see the need for her to start swallowing stuff. And when she does, it just kind of happens out of nowhere. And the movie really didn't come off as a well-orchestrated, planned piece of art. By the end of it, it was clear why. It just kind of seemed like they were trying to find some kind of nice little indie film vessel for a message they were trying to get across.
That's a great way to put it.
And that was not really going to ever be the way to a great film. You're not going to make a good movie if you're just trying to get some kind of message across, and that being first and foremost, that's just going to affect the quality of what you're doing a lot. So that's kind of how I felt walking out of it. I felt like I just watched some kind of propaganda film.
I think you articulated it very well and more graciously and generously than I would have. I watched it and immediately felt angry that I paid $7 to rent it.
I think it was $8.
Yeah. And we watched the trailer, and the trailer made it look very interesting. It was very compelling. It seemed like compelling.
Compelling.
It seemed right up our alley, right up the alley of the podcast. Exactly the type of stuff that we would be interested in talking about. And I think it is going to make for still a great conversation and a great in-depth conversation. But it's not the one that Mike and I thought we were going to be having. And the one I think we will be having is a little intimidating to he and I because it dabbles in... the movie itself does not dabble. There's nothing subtle about the political messaging in the movie.
No.
But it's going to force us to dabble in certain political
We're going to try to be subtle.
Yeah, so the trailer just misrepresented the movie entirely. What did you think of the script? Did you think it was believable the way it was written?
I was going to say we should title this video A Lesson in Subtlety and bait and switch our viewers and make them think that the movie is about being subtle, but really it's us being subtle. And we're really not going to be that subtle. But it is kind of like, this is definitely one of those, this movie would, what do you call it? It'd be called a cautionary tale in subtlety. What was the question you were asking me?
I was asking about the script, but
right.
anything that you
want to
say
about that's not subtle.
That's
That's how I was trying to tie it. So the script is not subtle. It's really, I don't know. It's funny. Like we'll get into it, but that's my high level thought on.
Did you feel
script.
like the dialogue was believable?
No.
Outside of the message?
No.
Really?
I really liked the Syrian guy, but we'll talk about him later. Man, I want to talk about things.
I know.
I'm ready to talk about things.
But this is a good way to do it.
Okay.
So high level
No,
things
it's
would
not
be
subtle.
like
It
production
has some characters
quality.
that are very subtle, but in general, I don't think the script is subtle, and by that definition, it is a bad script.
Did you agree with me that the acting and the visuals in the movie were of good quality?
Yes. The acting was very good. The visuals were very good. It was a very pretty movie.
It's
a indie movie, so it'll make all of the indie people really happy.
In that way, it was a missed opportunity, I think, because it seemed to have the budget and a really unique storyline to make something great out of it, and it just chose to go a different direction. Yeah. So, is that all the high-level stuff, all the pre-spoiler stuff?
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give you guys my best memory of what happens. So Hunter what's her husband's name? Okay, Richie. His name is Richie. Okay. That's funny. Okay. So, okay.
Richie Rich, specifically. I bet.
It's horrible. Subtlety. Okay. So Hunter is this girl who grew up, like most people do. She worked retail, basically. All this stuff is what they tell as her backstory. Just a regular girl, pretty. And so she marries this guy named Richie. And Richie is a controlling jerk. He's a control freak. And his parents are very involved in his life, in his marriage. The very nice house that they have that looks over this gorgeous river or lake or whatever it is, I think that was paid for by his parents. I think it's hilarious. His name is Richie. But so, anyways, he's very rich, and his parents are very rich, and you can kind of tell that his parents were helicopter parents growing up, and I think that kind of informs the way he kind of treats his own wife.
They're overly involved in Hunter and Richie's relationship.
Oh, yeah. And
it's all abusive. It's not just that he's controlling or that they're controlling. It is for sure abusive behavior.
Yeah. And so, anyways, they own this fancy house, and she's just a housewife. She just kind of stays home, does the cooking and cleaning. It definitely seems to have a negative view of that, which is fine. Like, there's definitely people who do cooking and cleaning who do like it. There's people who do cooking and cleaning who don't like it. I don't have any opinion towards that view. It's telling the story of a woman who is definitely not happy in her life and doesn't know how to express it. She seems like kind
abused.
of a pushover.
Like, that's an important component
abused.
To her story.
She's abused, and she's definitely unhappy, but doesn't know how to express it.
And she clearly has no agency. So to the abuse comment, it's very clear that she's not living out a life that she wants. And when she does try to speak up to give her input and maybe influence the way her life is going and their life is going, he shuts her down and is not open to having those conversations at all.
No, not at all. They don't have conversations. I do think the script did a good job portraying how an abusive, controlling marriage would go, because there are many moments where Richie is very he seems loving. He seems like he really cares about his wife. And the way that the script does it is clever. Like, they do it in all the right ways, where it's like the way that he's loving is like he knows how to like control her for a certain period of time, and then when he feels like there's an appropriate moment for him to kind of get on her good side, he'll be sweet with her. And then he kind of uses that to manipulate her into doing what he wants.
In that way, it's very believable and realistic, because that's my understanding of how abuse really is it's not that it's so blatant. You know, you have to give credit to these victims. These aren't just stupid people. You know, they are actually being manipulated by people that are good at manipulation.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure. So the way the trailer portrays it is their abusive relationship. She hits a breaking point, starts wanting to consume things around the house. Thumbtacks, batteries. I think I saw a chess piece. Pieces, little things that are about that big that she knows she can probably pass. And that's the way the trailer sets it up. And then you find out in the real movie, before she breaks, they get pregnant. And she seems happy. He seems ecstatic. Ultimately, though, she kind of realizes this really locks, like I think she has a moment where she realizes, I'm locked in with these people who do not care about me. They're having some conversation over dinner where I think she realizes how much they do not care about her. They just care about the kid. They care about their son. They just see her as this vessel for something.
She's a prop in his life.
Even Richie's dad says, "Oh, that kid's going to be the next CEO. I can just tell." It's like, they clearly have no value for her. She gets pregnant, and then she starts swallowing these things after that happens. And then by the end of the movie, she decides to, run away from her family when they find out that she's swallowing stuff. They try to get her to go to like rehab, something protective, and they go, just until the baby's born. And then she decides to escape. The husband, Richie, gets really intense. Like, he seems really loving like he calls her on the phone like, hey, you come back. He is very nice to her, and then when she says she's not coming back, he calls her a cunt, and is really just, he shows his true colors basically. And then the big empowering moment at the end of the movie is she has an abortion, and basically that's the end of the movie, and that ends up being all that they were leading up to, which is not very profound. It's not very interesting, and it really doesn't give any credit to the interesting premise they had going. You just kind of realize this was always just a weirdly disturbing way to tell the story of someone getting an abortion.
It's also contradictory. The end message is contradictory to other things that they had going on throughout the movie, in terms of that being what the main message was. And it did feel like there was a very distinct moment in the final maybe 20, maybe even 10% of the movie where they went, actually, this is the direction we're going. So everything else that we've kind of like hinted at, this is actually where we're going. This is the most important thing. And that was off-putting, to feel like they were leading you down a trail, and then you get to the end and you're like, oh, it was about that. But yeah, you just feel like you are not given very much respect or credit as a viewer, and it hurts. It stings. Yeah. We didn't like it.
Yeah, for sure. There's a YouTuber I really like. I don't remember his name, but he did a video talking about the difference between, a film that talks about a political issue and does it in a subtle way, even to the point of being like not even picking a side. And one example he used was American History X, which, I don't think it's a super controversial position to say that it's wrong to be a Nazi. I don't think that's super controversial. I know there are people who are Nazis, but he uses that as this shining example of someone who's, being subtle. Because even that movie, while it's clear what what route the character goes. He goes from being a neo-Nazi to not being racist anymore after a stint in prison. That movie just tells a story It doesn't use political language. It doesn't, it doesn't prop things up in this way where you feel like someone's just giving you, it doesn't feel like some political video. It doesn't feel like there's a clear message trying to be just, cast on its viewers, like its viewers can't work it out for themselves. It's telling the story of someone going from one opinion to the next. And this movie is an example of what this guy would have called propaganda. You find out that her dad raped her mom, and that's the reason she exists. And she decides to go confront him about it. They seem like they're going one direction where he could have a realistic response to how this conversation is about to go. But ultimately what happens is she asks him, why did you do it? And they just decide to have him give this evil villain speech. He just instantly knows exactly why he did it. And he's like, because of the power. He's got like he's like, it's almost like super villain, evil plan, master plan music should be playing. Because he's like, well, there's so much power, isn't there? And there's a secret that you have that no one else has. There's so much power in that. And he just like looks at her with these crazy eyes. Like he's so passionate about it.
Is that self-aware?
I don't think so. And so he has this evil villain persona basically. But then he tells her, well, and then I went to prison, and it sounded like he was saying that he got raped in prison and had a horrible time, obviously. And he got out, and I guess it changed the way he looked at life. And he basically tells her, I've turned from that. Obviously, I'm not doing that anymore. They have a weirdly, strangely kind of twisted, heartfelt moment.
She asks him, her follow-up question to him is, am I like you? And he says, no, you're not like me. And so he's basically communicating to her, you're not like me, and my life has been redeemed, and I'm sorry. And that's the gist of the conversation. Like, the beginning starts the way Micah is saying, where it's this weird evil villain speech, and you're like, where is this going? This doesn't seem realistic. But then it switches course, and actually, Micah and I both said that it was one of the more positively powerful moments in the movie that I thought was good, and I thought they were going to capitalize on it, and they did not.
Yeah, I mean, that had so much potential. Like, that's a situation that not many people can relate with. People have talked about reuniting with their dads, and maybe the dad was distant or he left her mom. But I've never seen a movie where a girl confronted her rapist dad.
Yeah, that was so interesting.
Was a very interesting scene, and I have no idea how you would maneuver that. I don't think there'd be an evil master plan villain type speech, but that's brave of them to do a scene like that.
Cinematically, that's like
pretty amazing,
unprecedented, and extremely interesting for people.
That conversation seemed like a significant moment of redemption for, I don't know about him, but it seemed like a moment of redemption for her, because clearly she has issues with her own self-worth because she's aware of this fact. She goes to a therapist, tells her, I'm the child of a rape. How do you say this? My mom was raped. My mom was raped, and that's why I'm here. It sounds horrible. Every way you say it, it sounds horrible.
Well, she doesn't understand it. The gist. She's in there to speak with her therapist about why she's swallowing things and maybe what psychological issues are behind that. And the therapist presses her on sharing about her family past, to which she replies, why is that relevant? And doesn't really want to get into it and doesn't see why it's important. Come to find out, she reveals to the therapist in a very nonchalant way, oh, hey, I am a child of rape. And the therapist is like, huh, and trying to keep her cool about it, which we talked about how that would be hard for therapists in that setting, hearing all sorts of crazy things and then having to respond very level-headed and unemotionally. And the therapist kind of leads on, okay, well, that's actually significant, and that could be bearing a lot of weight on your behavior right now. Let's talk about that. Take it away.
That's perfect. You're saying it perfectly. So basically, the therapist is stunned, and this is where the movie starts to turn into a propaganda type movie, where it seems disingenuous if they're going to claim that they didn't have an opinion. I mean, Planned Parenthood's in the credits. So whatever political opinion you have when you're making a movie, one really easy lesson you can learn from this movie is not to use a phrase, especially when you're talking about a topic that's in the news a lot and is being hotly debated by a lot of people, not to use a phrase that you commonly hear one
Partisan
of the sides.
Language.
I guess you could call it that. Yeah.
Like
I mean,
culturally,
it's just like
cultural political slang.
Yeah, like there's real conversations happening about different topics, but it's like the kind of stuff you hear on like, what do you call it? It's the kind of stuff you hear on like the news when someone is just kind of using a political like
a talking
buzz
point.
phrase, like a talking point buzz phrase. Basically, the therapist goes, "Well, did your parents consider maybe aborting you?" In so many words is basically what she says. Just whatever your opinion is, not the thing to say to someone who is alive. So anyways, this stupid therapist who should have her license revoked says that. And then she goes, why didn't your parents think of that? And then she goes, well, I can almost remember it verbatim because it's very steeped in political wording. She goes, well, my parents are these crazy white right-wing conservative Christian types who
she
don't.
Have said gun-toting racists.
She might as well. She basically goes, well, my parents are these crazy conservative right-wing Christian types, and they don't believe in abortion. And then she goes, especially, this is where you can just put the brackets around it, the quotes, and just say, okay, this just clearly got taken from a CNN panel and dropped here. And she just goes, even in the cases of incest or rape.
Like totally straight face.
No one's going to talk like that.
Totally straight face. And this is a woman that they've been previously portraying as simple and...
She seems like a right-wing conservative Christian type.
Like demure. Like what's the word I'm looking for? Like she's passive. She's portrayed as extremely passive.
Pushover.
A pushover, which we can get into more. This is all not to say this woman doesn't deserve respect.
Yeah, she should be taking control of her life. Of course,
yeah.
For sure.
But the way that they are portraying her is not as someone who would say, even in the cases of incest. Like, it doesn't add up. It doesn't add up in more than one way.
Yeah, and this is why I said not enough people are shitting on this. We watched a review of Chris Stuckman, who is one of my favorites, and Ryan Hollinger, who is one of my favorites. And those are big names. I think it seems, I would assume they're pretty big names in YouTube. And I saw they both did reviews on this movie recently, which is actually kind of cool because we saw it didn't really have a lot of coverage when we realized we wanted to do it. And then in the weeks leading up to us deciding to talk about it, we saw that other people were starting to post videos and we're like, great. So anyways, we watched these. I have no idea what their political leanings are, but the fact that they don't even like bat an eyelash at the propaganda type angle. And I mean, clearly we have our own political opinions. Everyone has a political opinion one way or the other. But whatever your political opinion is, you need to be able to call bullshit when you see it. And they were not calling bullshit. They just were like, oh, it's this on the propaganda
itself.
They were just whatever side they're on, you have to be willing to call it. Like I was telling her, and actually her husband, my brother-in-law, that I don't like Christian movies and I'm a Christian. I don't like Christian movies because they come off as propaganda a lot. The way that they portray atheists or agnostics in these movies, they make them the shittiest people ever. And then they make the Christian protagonist this like angel. And it's like, that is not how real life works. I'm a Christian. I know how people are. There are some awesome atheist people. And so it's just a matter of being honest, being genuine with yourself and with others about when something is poorly done. And this movie was poorly done. It had an amazing premise. If it had been given to anyone else, they would have done something awesome with it. It seemed like
extremely
great idea
unique.
for a movie.
So many potential moments for...
And it's talking about a real thing. What's it called? Pica?
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 Pica. Pica, I think it is.
Yeah.
And it's something that pregnant women deal with, where they have this desire to eat and chew on things that are not edible to satisfy some type of pregnancy deficiency, pregnancy craving. I've heard women say they have this with soap and other things. I've never heard of women swallowing things that are harmful to the baby, which is another path we will go down, which is that maybe she was subconsciously trying to abort the baby before the actual abortion at the end. But let's try to get back to.
So, anyways, what I was saying, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
About the propaganda. So that conversation happens. She eventually decides to ditch her husband and his parents, and she runs away. And I don't really see where the empowerment is in this movie. The empowerment seems, for the creators of this movie, it seemed like empowerment was defined by her having an abortion at the end of the movie. But the problem with that is, beyond just the propaganda element of it, where you're saying things like, even in cases of rape and incest, you made a movie that seems to be teaching the opposite message in everything that happens. She finds out she's the child of rape. She meets the guy. He tells her, look, I've made a new life for myself. I realize how horrible that was. I experienced it in prison. I realize I'm a monster. You're not like me. You have value.
Redemption is a real thing that can be achieved. And honestly, if she had been told in that moment that her life and her story could be redeemed,
which is basically
the same
what he
way
said, isn't
his
it?
life and his story. Yeah, like if that had been sort of the message that the movie was trying to hit hard, to punch, then I probably would have been fine.
So basically, this conversation happens with her dad. And the way that the movie ends, when I was done with the movie and thinking about the message it was trying to leave me, it felt like what they were trying to say was, well, you were born of rape, a bad situation, and you didn't get aborted, so how can you make this right? You can abort your child, and then there's a
like
balance.
An eye for an eye.
That's exactly how it feels. It feels like the movie is trying to say, well, you can be aborted, but you can still make things right. The fact that the ending, unless they were trying to make it a negative ending, which doesn't seem to be the case in terms of the music they play and the way they make it off like this great purging moment, but that's not what the rest of the movie seems to want you to think. Like, it's just completely dissonant with what the movie seems to be leading up to telling you on how life should be. Because the whole movie is her learning that she has value. But then she decides, well, I guess my kid can't possibly be redeemed, even though she's born of a much worse situation.
Right. Say that again. Hit that one more time.
She just decides, hit that baby one more time. Okay. You're going to have to cut that out. Okay. What did I say?
So she spends the entire movie basically finding her way to realizing her own value. And so to have the movie end with her sort of spitting in the face of her child's value and doing something that is counter to what she's realized about her own self, her own person and her own self-worth, she's going to go, okay, well, my dad was a jerk, but I'm still valuable. But your dad was a jerk and you're not. So we're jumping all around. But the end scene where she does abort the baby, she takes some type of pill, and then the shot lingers on this public bathroom where you can see the sink vanity, and you can see the public bathroom stalls. And the shot lingers with women of all sorts of walks of life coming and going. And
just pretty lazy, weak imagery. Erin told me what her theory was on the point of the shot, but to me it was like, the shot is stupid. Like,
it lingers there through the credits.
Whatever
so
their
just
plan was for the
on.
shot was stupid.
I think the plan was to punch home in the last few minutes of the movie. This story is about women. This story is about empowering women, even if we don't know what empowering means. This story is about... This story is... I mean, man, I just got to the end and felt like they were not upfront with me about what I was getting into. And And I am someone who believes that if, regardless of what you believe, what your values are, politically or otherwise, everybody has some type of personal values or lack thereof. And if you want to exercise those to support or not, like you should be allowed to give your money to the things that you want to give it to. And I think this movie was something where it pretended like it was just a drama about an interesting psycho thriller. Like, hey, let's.
They don't even mention she's pregnant in the trailer.
No, they don't.
So here's the thing. Regardless of politics, they don't even, like, she doesn't even really have a redeeming moment when it comes to eating things. Like, she escapes her husband, which is, I guess, supposed to be one redeeming moment when he's, they're trying to send her to this rehab thing. But then, I mean, I don't know why I keep calling it rehab, but basically she goes to some hotel room and stays alone for a night before she goes to confront her father the next day. And she straight up is eating soil. Like, she's eating like fertilizer.
Like mulch, like garden soil.
She's eating mulch. She's got it like piled on the bed like it's popcorn or something. And she's eating it like it's popcorn while she's watching some movie on the TV. And it's like, they never even fixed that storyline.
Yeah.
Like, she just keeps eating. So is the empowering message, yeah, keep eating random stuff and get an abortion. Like, this movie doesn't know how to have any empowering messaging. It just clearly had a message it wanted to tell, and it didn't care about the character. It didn't care about any kind of story arc. The fact that people that I like, people whose reviews I really appreciate, decided to not say anything about the glaring flaws with this movie really makes me mad. Outside of politics, it was a bad movie.
Do you think on their part it's a fear of like getting political, or?
Well, I don't want to get political, but it's like But
you want to be honest about the movie.
Yeah, you want to be honest about the movie, and maybe they just were. I don't know what their opinion is on the messaging, but maybe they were happy with the messaging and decided to, or maybe they were just numb to the messaging. I know some people on both the conservative and liberal side who they have no appreciation and sensitivity to people who might disagree with them.
Yeah,
they
that's true.
Just see their point of view of the world as, that's just how the world is. Sorry. And it's like, that's not how the world is. Sorry. That's not the norm. So I could see them easily just being numb to the messaging because maybe it's what they believe, and they just were like, yeah, well, I like the movie. But it's like, that's stupid. Of course, no, you didn't like the movie. Don't give the movie 2 thumbs up. It got a 6 on IMDb, and I think that's a good rating. It's a bad movie. It's not a good movie.
I mean, if nothing else, like, politics aside,
take all the politics out, it's a bad movie.
It's not about what you think it's going to be about, and not in a positive way. Not like, oh, they threw a twist at us and it was interesting and engaging, but in a, oh, we didn't want to review a political movie. We wanted to review something that we thought was going to allow us to have an interesting conversation about psychology and things like that.
Yeah. The story had nothing to do with the ultimate like climax of the movie. It had nothing to do with the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
It had no bearing on any of the other things. Like, she's still eating mulch to this day.
As someone who values art and artistic expression, I don't think this movie has integrity from that standpoint. And I would prefer to not be supporting movies that take that approach to filmmaking. I would prefer to be supporting movies that actually have something interesting to bring to the table. So that's where I'm coming from. I would say don't give your money to it. If you must watch it for free.
Find a way to pirate this bitch.
Okay, so interesting thing. In the beginning of the movie, one of the first things that you see is you see a lamb being selected for slaughter. And then the next scene is a dinner party with Hunter and her husband Richie. They're his parents and some, I guess, friends and family. And he's kind of giving a speech. You can tell they're celebrating some success on his part, some business success or something. And he's giving a speech and he's thanking her in the speech. And he refers to her as giving and selfless. And so that was the first moment that I thought maybe in the movie she was being set up as a sacrificial lamb. Because again, the scene, they were eating lamb and drinking Cabernet. And that beginning scene with the slaughter of the lamb. And then a little while later, you saw a baby mobile above a crib and it had little sheep. And so I thought maybe that was the theme they were trying to run with. If that is something they were running with, her being a sacrificial lamb, as we said before, her life did very much revolve around him. She was clearly bored, very bored, always playing games on her phone and not doing much else. She was isolated. She was very disrespected. And what I said earlier was that she was a prop in his life. And that was a definite impression that I got, was that she was only there to serve the purpose of being a wife, taking care of his needs, and being a mother to his child. She did not exist in his life as a person to have a relationship with him. She was just serving sort of this, and it was almost like a family goal of, sort of protecting this kind of dynasty. So yeah, that was one thought. Did you have any thoughts about that as far as her being a sacrificial lamb?
I think that's actually a really interesting point. Like, I think that's totally valid.
Did you see anything else in the movie that would make you go, maybe she was?
Well, knowing the angle they were going with the movie, I think I was going to bring it up when I was talking about the message I walked away with of, well, you weren't aborted, but you can still right that wrong and abort your kid. It kind of was making me think about the scapegoat concept. Mm-hmm. That's all I would say.
Yeah. Like nothing happened.
They don't even know.
Yeah.
I just peed.
Okay, so another note that I'd taken was that there's a scene where she has all the different things that she's swallowed lined up on a table. And my impression of that was like she was collecting things that her body had passed, almost like a game to test the strength and perseverance of her body, how much her body could handle before it had had enough. And I thought that was interesting and potentially relevant to the final message, because if they felt like they were empowering women and empowering women's bodily autonomy and bodily strength, that might have been something they were running with. I don't know. They also had scenes of her playing, I think the game is Bejeweled on her phone, which made me think that maybe it was just kind of like a physical game of collecting tiny objects. And it's a weird way to put it, but
that's a good point.
That was kind of the imagery.
Yeah. I mean, I have a feeling the way this movie was done, the lack of subtlety, I have a feeling that they were not going that route in terms of like her kind of collecting the things she passed. I mean, it seemed pretty obvious they were, but a lot of things seemed pretty obvious to me about the way they did this movie that ultimately turns out they weren't doing that. So I feel like maybe that's just you being
sensitive,
a little bit more
things.
genius about, concepts. Because I don't think...
Let's call it genius, for sure.
I mean, maybe they were doing that. That could have been an amazing route. Like if they decided to kind of turn it into this psychological, like she's trying to like figure out what her body will be able to handle. Like that is a kind of a fascinating concept.
Well, and the idea was that she didn't collect it until it passed through her. So the one thing that she was not able to pass was like a small screwdriver, and it never ended up on the table. Remember, it was like a tiny one of those little ones for phones and stuff.
Yeah.
And it didn't end up on the table. And so it was as if her body had to fully process and pass these items in order for her to view them as a success. Like it was a game. Like it was there was a clear intent on her part. You know, she wasn't just swallowing it.
It might have been
because she could, you know?
Yeah. Well, it honestly, it might have been her just having this like weird state of mind where it was like, it might have been kind of going along with the messaging of I can do whatever I want with my own body. Because it seemed like every time people were complaining, every time people were upset about what she was doing, it seemed like they were focused on the kid and rather than on her, which I would be focused on both. But she seemed like it was just like it's not a kid, it's not a person. So it's really just about what I want to do with my own body. And I guess that was the empowering moment, especially, which I think makes sense considering she ditches them
she was
and then
like
keeps eating soil.
There was a scene where she was holding her belly as if she personally, apart from her jerk husband, cared for this. She viewed it as something that made her feel less alone. And so it was all very contradictory, the messaging.
You want to talk about the Syrian?
Yeah, let's talk about the Syrian next.
I like the Syrian guy.
So there's a Syrian guy that shows up, and he is tasked with basically keeping an eye on her when she's at the height of her pica. And he's really likable because he's one of the only people in the movie that offers her any type of respect. And one exchange that her and him have in the movie is that he essentially says to her, I came from Syria. I came from war. What's the gist of what he's saying? It's basically like...
Well, he says...
problems of the mind versus war.
He says, you have a lot of problems of the mind. And he goes, not much time for problems of the mind when you're being shot at.
Yeah, that's almost the exact quote, probably.
He's like the one cool guy in this movie.
Yeah, and he ends up facilitating her escape. He helps her with that, which is pretty cool. But that made Micah think of a Joe Rogan quote, which is, I struggle physically so I don't have to struggle mentally. And that related to this for us and was just an interesting concept culturally that people do deal with different struggles based on what type of life you're leading, where you're leading it. And that's just an interesting thought.
Yeah, definitely. I think the movie, for its ultimate message, it had, if you completely took out the conversation with the therapist and the ending of the movie had some really interesting messaging. And like it said, it seemed to have some seriously valuable like life advice and life, like I said multiple times, cautionary tales. Like it showed the people who treated her well, the people who treated her horribly. Mm-hmm. And then, have in between, you have her husband and her family who are just being straight up manipulative and sneaky about it. They're not so blatant as the hug guy or so blatant as the Syrian guy. They are just this weird gray area where, you don't really, you clearly, they're abusive and they're controlling, but that's like the one way that the movie really gives you respect, and it doesn't really give you respect towards the end.
Yeah.
But there's some value.
We
in the
really
movie.
liked the Syrian guy. Was pretty great. He didn't talk much, but he viewed her as a human, and he was extending genuine respect and empathy towards her, when no one was, which was really cool. Did we want to say anything like in summary?
People need to know what the movie seems like it's going for when they see the trailer. If you're going to show a trailer about a woman swallowing stuff, make it about a woman swallowing stuff and everything that a normal human being would expect from that. If you're going to make a political movie, make it clear to people you're making a political movie so the people who support your views can go watch it, and the people that don't support your views can stay away from it. People want to know. And some people
don't want politics
especially like
at
me,
all.
Don't want any politics. I don't want to watch a political movie. It's people go to the movies and they go play video games and they watch TV to avoid politics. We now have this period of time. We have this thing going on right now where everything's political, and the excuse that's made for it is, well, people need to speak up. And it's like, we live in the internet age. People know your opinion. People do not need you to educate them on how things work. People constantly have it shoved down their throat. So when people go to the movies or they watch TV or they play a game, what do you think they're trying to do? They're trying to escape their world.
Yeah. So anyways, guys, that's about it. I think we've probably shared about everything that we wanted to share. Yeah. So as always, let us know if there's anything that you want us to watch and review on the channel. We're having a lot of fun with this. I think we are getting the hang of it. Don't forget to like the video if you liked it and subscribe if you subscribed it. And we'll see you next time.